Okay, so we're gonna begin with public comment on items that are not being heard tonight. Okay.
Hi, Jamie Feely for SBPF. I just wanted to address the board about some comments that were made at last week's meeting regarding some of the maintenance that happened post the 9/7 and 9/8 storm, and I brought some pictures that show the tracks and what happened after we were done with our maintenance on that Monday. And I just wanted to say that there wasn't any beach material pushed up with the exception of this one very small spot on the northern end of the ramp. As our machine operator was tracking off, he just noticed there was a little piece of geotube that was showing. And so I've talked to him about that. It's not something that will happen again. He was just trying to do something that he thought was common sense on the way off the beach. And but anyway, here's some pictures that you guys can reference, that you can see all the tracks after all of the maintenance work is done. And from those tracks you can see that there was no beach sand with the exception of one very small spot where he thought he was doing a good thing. He'd be here today to represent himself and what happened out there, but he's off island, and so I just wanted to make that statement. If you have any,
This is the area in question where this little clip of sand is.
yes, exactly.
Can you make sure you leave one of those for Jeff?
Yep.
Just as a quick clarification, is that sand still in place or has it been changed out with mitigation sand? The small area where
It's exactly as you see it in that picture. And
Okay.
these pictures, just for the record, they were all taken. We had no idea that somebody would make comments at the last meeting. These were all taken prior to that meeting as part of a regular post-storm report that we do for you guys that gets submitted because it wasn't a major storm. It gets submitted for the quarterly reporting that we do. And you will see these same pictures with before and after pictures as part of that report that was put together. I just took the post pictures for the purpose of today's comments. Questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public?
Thank you, Chairpersons Erisman, Burton Balkind, and I'm going to make a comment first about Jamie's comment. There were 3 small spots. They were all small, but I have photographic proof, and I think I submitted some pictures to Jeff email. But it was basically, and I also talked to the operator, and he said the same thing. He said he couldn't see the toe of the geotubes from the top when he was pushing down. So when he got down to the bottom and he saw those exposed places, and he just figured he'd push up the sand. Yeah, which he said he didn't know, and he said he's been talked to by SPPF since then, and said he's got better directions on what to do. And that was going to be my first question, if any information's come of that. So we have that. The second question was going to be about the June dumping of sand material. Have we got anything else, Jeff, from
No,
DEP?
that's still with DEP.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public? Okay, seeing not, the following items are continued. In notices of intent, we have Mary D. Starr continued until October 23rd. Gregory Reyes continued until October 23rd. We have Chuck Rowe Nominee Trust continued until October 23rd. And then in certificates of compliance, we have Cambridge at 10 Medui Creek continued until October 23rd.
And 2 more, sorry.
Yes.
Let me get the date correctly. So Winers Way, Swan Mountain LLC have requested both of those to be continued. A and B both. To the next meeting. I believe it's the.
Okay.
Make sure I have that date correct. To the 9th, yes.
Okay, so Salon Elves LLC at 3 Wires Way, Lot A and Lot B will continue until October 9th.
Jeff, did you wanna continue as well to the ninth? Yes, please. Alright, and then Giselle Reinhardt, 11 Jonathan Way would also like to continue to the ninth of October.
Real quick, Salon is continuing until the 23rd, and Giselle till 19th, of all of those.
Both of those to October 9th.
Yes.
They're all going to October 9th.
Correct.
Okay. So the continuances will begin at Laz Family Nominee Trust at 20 Wakuit Road.
For the applicant, Arthur Gasparo, Nantucket Engineering, I'm before you tonight with a notice of intent application for the property 20 Wacoit Road, located on the south shore, just west of Maddoxsham Valley. The project involves the installation of a sand foredune, essentially some sacrificial nourishment along the base of an eroding coastal bank. We are proposing no structural elements with this application, just to come in and put some clean beach compatible sand, sort of in a triangle type shape, and an effort to hopefully feed the beach there, build the beach, and slow the erosion of the bank a little bit naturally. We have had a study, a peer review done by Lee Wisher of Woods Hole Group, and a report prepared, which was included with the information that we provided to you. This has been on your agenda for a while for the purpose of getting that study done. In the meantime, I have updated the location of the coastal bank, and that's what's shown on the current plan that you have before you. You can see I also added a dimension that we're about, the project's no closer than 500 feet to the westerly abutter, and there is sort of an existing, it's all low vegetation there, where we can access with the dump truck to dump the sand, and then we would just ramp down at that one spot with a small machine to move the sand back and forth within the limit of work that's shown by the dashed line on the plan. We would set stakes in the field to delineate that limit of work, and that would be the toe of the fill, if you would, as we move towards the NCF property line to the east. There's no work that's proposed off of the property, and we don't believe that we would then propose in the spring, just before the spring, to plant the foredune with beach grass. I'd be happy to address questions or concerns that you may have.
Any questions from the commission?
There need to be any irrigation to get that beach grass started or anything?
Yeah, we would do temporary irrigation would be proposed for just after the beach grass is put in. It would be you know, that size of a planting is fairly expensive, and you know, just making sure that those plants, because I would like to oversize that big, see that they use bare root plugs, so it would be important to get those watered for at least the first season.
It looks like in some of these photos that right at the top of the bank might be bank swallow habitat.
We wouldn't go to the very top of the bank. You can see on the profile where the sand stops, because the size of that bank, if I was to try to fill that all in over that length, it would be an even greater volume of sand. So a condition that said, you know, perhaps the top 4 feet remains open, I think would be fine.
Okay. Thank you.
Except for at the one ramp spot. That would have to
Be the whole way.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other thoughts or questions from the commission? Questions from the public? No? Alright. Jeff, do we have everything we need to close?
We do.
Would you like to close?
Yes, please.
Okay, do I have a motion? Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so moving on to Phil Paston at 111 Eel Point Road.
I'm still recused from this.
Good afternoon. Stan Humphreys and Arthur Reed for the applicant. Last meeting, we had a discussion about the presence of this mound of sand, whether it being a dune or not, and the possibility of having a condition that would postpone the construction of the project until we've had time within the next year to really assess the function of the dune. You know, at this point, just to maybe reiterate what I had said last meeting when I was questioned about the landward migration limited by the project, I think my response was, well, there's a coastal bank there anyway. The dune really doesn't have an opportunity to migrate other than go up the face of the bank. And recall too that this is the area in front of the coastal bank that we want to maintain at least 166 cubic yards of material. That was calculated by the method that's been accepted of the bank height times the erosion rate times the length of the project. So we did discuss and thought more about the postponement of the constructing the project to monitor the dune. I think there are past conditions that I've seen that are consistent with what we've proposed in the project in terms of monitoring, and that we would consider a condition to that effect in the order of conditions for approval. Any questions?
So despite the fencing and the sand, the bank is still receding? Is it still eroding? Is it eroding from the base, or is it just, you know, the top coming down and kind of reaching its natural angle of repose?
Well, the most severe erosion occurred during those March storms in 2017. Since that time, the sand or snow fencing has been able to trap windblown sand and maintain a volume that's available for beach sediment supply. So the bank hasn't actively been eroding over the last 2 years because of the presence of that. You know, one of the...
But under severe storms, it still is, I guess that was my question. So this hasn't really stopped the erosion?
Not per se. No, I mean, there's a lot of bare area on it. So wind and rain erosion is certainly working as erosion factor. And also I want to point out that, you know, the risk that we're taking over monitoring for the next year and postponing the project itself is that there is a storm that takes the dune out and exposes the bank to erosion without the project. We'd have to mobilize pretty quickly, but the other factor is that the next door neighbor was going to start construction like this or next month. And so where it was anticipated this project could be constructed at the same time, we're postponing that. So that's just going to be an additional cost to mow and remow within the next year or shortly thereafter, let's say.
I guess I was kind of thinking about this, and it seems to me this idea of putting some sand drift fence and, you know, hoping to trap sand and stop erosion that way is probably one of the least detrimental ways you can, you know, compared to say armoring the bank with, you know, even with our bio, you know, whatever they bioengineered. And I just, you know, feel like if they did more or less did the right thing by trying the minimally harmful approach first, and that's not working. You know, I guess I tried to listen to the last meeting, but it wasn't always clear. I just don't think he should get punished for trying to do the right thing first. You know, I think we should encourage this kind of thing first, if possible, and if that works, it's great. If it doesn't, then and moving the house option, I know that the space is available, but if you recall, that front yard is habitat. You know, that's the kind of stuff we would wish people would have in their yards, not grass. And I hate to say, okay, now he's got habitat in the front yard, and we're going to make him move a house into habitat. It just seems like we're working against what we normally try to promote.
I mean, I agree somewhat, but we didn't go out and do a site visit and say, hey, that looks like a dune. You know, the experts identified it as a coastal dune and put it on our plan. And our regs are pretty clear about what is allowed when you have something like a dune, especially since, you know, historically there had been a dune there. You know, so given the extreme erosion in 2017, this could be the natural build out of a dune again. You know, so I really do think we should wait and see if a dune is establishing, give it that winter season. Because if not, we're not going to have any more dunes, you know, and it is against our regs to impede this dune's function and movement. You know, because it won't, a dune's not going to grow grass within 6 months necessarily, you know, and I know that the dune was fairly bare on the front, but there was beach grass on that back side that was reestablishing or had come off the bluff. So, I mean, for me, to be okay with this project, we'd have to wait and see if that dune is actively trying to establish. If there's more vegetation there next year, you know, then they've really got a dune.
Actually, I would assume then you'd wait to have the house moved or anything out as well, right? Just leave it as is for years. Is that what you're saying?
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't think they're willing to move the house, so that's not,
right. No, I know.
You know, an option. So yeah, before there's any erosion control core rolls put on the bank, I think we need to really see if this is a true dune or if it gets blown out this winter.
I still think that it doesn't 100% qualify as a dune. I think it's more windblown sand because of the snow fencing. I don't know how you guys feel.
But I mean, guys, they identified a coastal dune on the plan. So that's one of those things that, like, we can't then say, nope, it's just windblown sand. I mean, this is the applicant who has said that.
Okay, what if an applicant comes in and they've got a bunch, you know, because we saw this in the past where people would come in and have really a coastal dune field up on top of the bank, and they would come in and claim it's not a dune field, and we didn't take their word for it. We went out and looked at it and said, no, this is a coastal dune field, and we made the determination. We don't always take the applicant's word for it.
Right. So I mean, last meeting we had a fairly detailed discussion again about this dune, and I thought somewhat on the same page about leaving it for a season to see if it's a truly
fine.
Established dune.
If the applicant's okay with that, I think
We
it's
are.
okay.
If I can hop in, Madam Chairman. I think there is some opportunity to do a little bit of both. I mean, I think, like we always talk about, actively monitoring sites for how they're changing and watching it through the season. And, you know, if the dune completely disappears and the bank erodes and the snow fence is completely exposed, you guys may have some opportunity to revisit when construction is available. I mean, it's not a, hey, we made the decision on September 25th, and, you know, next September 25th, we're going to reevaluate it again, and we'll talk about it then. I think you have the opportunity to let it be and let it perform and monitor it. And if the conditions change or they change one way or the other, you can give the applicant some, the ability to construct or say, hey, it's established. We're gonna continue to hold off until that changes. I mean, I think some of that's a conditioning issue for you guys, but I think it's something that you certainly have the ability to do that.
Thank you. Any other thoughts?
Putting in the monitoring as part of as one of the conditions makes a lot of sense to me, not just waiting, have ongoing monitoring, set some schedule or something here for that to be done would make sense to me. That way we stay on top of it and we don't wait until something drastic has happened.
Yeah, I think it's something, and kind of my thought had come from kind of reviewing the last discussion too, and also our past history with snow fence style fencing. And if it does completely expose, that's an excellent opportunity to remove something that we typically don't permit anymore, and get it out before you're in a situation like we're in now, where removing it is highly disruptive to what's going on and collecting. So I think it's something where, I don't want to say, continual monitoring, but pretty regular monitoring. So if it does expose, to say, hey, that section can come out, right? Let's make some smart choices and try to do that. So it may be active in that sense, but kind of keeping that open dialogue back from them to say, hey, this section's exposed, can we remove it? You guys can say yes, and then as we get to a certain phase of it, to say, the dune is gone, we've monitored through the season, can we start or can we not? But having that discussion and kind of regular updates, I think, would seemingly accomplish what you guys are looking to do. And it's, I did check, we can condition like that too.
Okay.
Well,
Thank
there's
you.
certainly no guarantee we're gonna get any big storms with the north. I mean, most years now we're getting some pretty good blows from the north
Yeah.
and the west.
I mean, that's certainly the flip side of the coin. As we get to the end of the storm season, and that snow fence is completely buried in sand, and there's a substantial dune in the front. I mean, it goes both ways. I mean, it could go one way or the other, but I think that's kind of the intent of what I listened to last meeting's discussion was kind of centered around.
Yeah, I know that works from my viewpoint.
It seems like it's going in the right direction, so if we can hopefully it keeps going that way, that'd be great.
Okay. Any questions or comments from the public? Okay. Jeff, do we have everything we need to close?
Yes, we have all the required information.
The commission have any more questions? Okay. Would you like to close?
Yes, please.
Okay, do I have a motion?
Motion to close.
Is there a second? All in favor? Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we're moving on to 115 Baxter Road LLC and 117 Baxter Road LLC at 115 and 117 Baxter Road.
For the applicant, Arthur Gasparo, along with Stephen Cohen, we're before you tonight for the third public hearing on this application, which involved the relocation of the residential structure away from the eroding coastal bank at the end of Baxter Road. We've provided supplemental information following the last hearing, where there was a bit of discussion about the reuse of the existing foundation and how that would be handled. And we have proposed to remove that foundation and fill the area with clean compacted sand from the foundation hole where the structure is being relocated. And then we've proposed some off-street parking area, driveway, and portion of where that house is, keeping that driveway outside of the 25-foot buffer zone. And there's essentially a driveway and a curb cut that already comes in there that goes into the garage that's under the existing structure. So in order to have some off-street parking, because the house, as you see, is coming, presuming that the license is granted from the select board, we're relocating the structure partially into the layout of Baxter Road. So we hope that these changes address the outstanding concerns that you had, and we'd be happy to take questions or concerns.
Any questions from the commission? Is the driveway just gonna be like compacted, or is it
Shallow gravel, something along the compacted sub base underneath, not asphalt.
Any questions from the public? Okay, Jeff, do we have everything we need to close?
Yes.
Would you like to close?
That's it.
Yes,
Okay. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you.
Okay, so we're moving on to 262 Pulpus Nominee Trust at 262 Pulpus Road.
Brian Madden from LEC Environmental, joined with Stephen Cohen, Mark Catone, and Don Bracken. At the last meeting, we discussed providing a mitigation planting area to revegetate portions of the existing BVW and buffer zone extending into lawn areas, which we provided as highlighted on the plans that we submitted last week. It's a 2,900 square foot area that we're proposing to replant with native shrubs. That will provide a 2.5 to 1 mitigation ratio for the proposed cabana and the deep end of the pool, requiring the waiver from the 2-foot separation to high groundwater. So that mitigation planting area, the 2,000 square foot invasive species management area, and the removal of the guest house, about 1,200 square feet of which is in the 100-foot buffer zone, will provide the long-term net benefit for the waiver request. And I guess at this point, I'll just turn over to questions.
Any questions from the commission? No. I appreciate you guys increasing the mitigation.
No problem.
Any questions from the public? Okay, seeing not. Jeff, do we have everything we need to close? Would you like to close?
Please.
All right, is there a motion? Is there
Second.
a second? All in favor?
Aye. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we're moving on to Great State Properties at 92 Washington Extension.
Is there someone here for this one? No, this is Leo's project. I say, let's hold off on this one. Let's move it to the end of notices if we could.
Okay.
And then we'll, my guess is he saw the list of stuff in front of it.
You got scared.
Probably knowing Leo working diligently on another project.
No idea. All right, so then we're gonna move on to Olson Realty Trust at 197A Nantucket Road.
Don Bracken for the applicant. Project consists of upgrading an existing failed septic system and adding a denitrification septic system. It's located in the Nantucket Harbor watershed area. The entire site is located within land subject to coastal storm flowage, AE zone elevation 9. The property is roughly at elevation 8. The proposed soil absorption system will be located in an existing disturbed area. There'll be a slight mound required in order to get the 6-foot groundwater separation to the bottom of the system. The mound consists of about 18 inches. All areas will be revegetated with loam and seed when complete. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from the commission? No questions. Any questions from the public? file number? Well, gonna wait for Jeff to step in to make sure
Oh,
he
okay.
has everything.
I don't think I got the file. Did you say you had a file
No,
number?
it looks like there's a file number. Yeah.
Oh, there is?
So
Okay.
my assumption is you're good to go, but Jeff, do we have everything we need to close 197A Nantucket Road?
Yes, you do.
Okay. So would you like to close?
Yes, thank you.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, so moving on to Peter L. O'Brien and Natalie V. O'Brien at 36 Low Beach Road.
Thank you. For the record, Paul Santos with Nantucket Surveyors, representing the applicant, Peter and Natalia O'Brien. This is a piece of property located at 36 Low Beach Road that was built and constructed back in the, I think, mid-90s or late 80s by Arnie Teasdale, and stayed in the Teasdale family till just recently when the O'Briens purchased the property. The property is located on the south side of Low Beach Road. The application before you is a notice of intent for the proposed construction of a pool, associated structures, utility installation, grading and landscaping within the buffer zone to a coastal dune. The dune line is shown at the extreme southern end of the property. There are dune flags, I believe 1 through 11, located on the back side of the property here. They're actually located in the vicinity of what was the former railroad baseline out in heading towards Sconset. The work itself is completely within the buffer zone. In fact, the majority of the proposed work is outside of the 100-foot buffer zone. We are in excess of the 25, in excess of the 50, and actually we've kept the work, essentially all the improvements, outside of the NHESP limit, but we are right on the fringe of it, so we did make a filing with NHESP to seek any input that they may have. So we do have a DEP file number. As of this point, we do not have a response from NHESP, so we will be asking to continue the hearing. Later on in the agenda, you have a request for determination of applicability to establish confirm the dune line that was flagged. It was flagged by David Haynes. The reason I did that was knowing that we wouldn't be able to close this hearing, and they do want to do some work in the front of the property outside the buffer zone, but we wanted to have the dune line at least fixed for the purposes of applying for the work at the front of the property. So the application itself, you'll see on the plan, there is a in-ground swimming pool, pergola, outdoor kitchen, and bathroom facility that will be associated with the pool. The site is connected to town water and town sewer, and the 100-foot buffer zone you'll see bisects the pool area itself. There is a small rise in grade in the back of this property. The pool itself will be set down approximately 3 feet. There'll be a retaining wall along the northerly side. There'd be a 3-foot drop, and the pool would be set level at approximately elevation 9. So the pool would not be visible from Low Beach Road or itself, as it would be set down below the grade that there is out there right now. There is some existing footpaths that go to the back side of the property. They would be maintained, and there is no issue with groundwater separation, as this is a coastal dune, not a vegetated wetland. So there are no waivers asked for within the application. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have. Any type of discharge from the pool, any of your standard conditions would have no problem meeting. That could all be done outside the jurisdiction, outside of the 100-foot setback. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions from the commission? Any questions from the public? I guess my only concern is how close the pergola is to the heritage line, but they'll
They'll
have
opine on that. Yeah,
conditions
we
on
tried to
that,
keep it up, but
so.
it was so close. You know, I spoke to staff with Jeff and Joe, and they said, you know, we'll make the filing. They may come back and return the check, but we gave them their chance. We gave them an opportunity to discuss it.
Yeah, just because we know how contractors work around here,
Yeah.
they'll step over that line.
Yeah,
quite
I did include
regularly.
the area. It's a limited amount of area, but I did include an area over the line, and when I made the filing, just to let them know, because we're gonna obviously there's gonna be some grading in that area that we'll have to account for. So.
Okay.
All right.
Any other thoughts? Are we good? Right, so would you like to continue?
We'd
for
like
2
to continue,
weeks? All right,
yes.
So that's until October 9th.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'll be back on this same one actually, just to confirm the dune line under an RDA. So later in this meeting. Thank you. Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're moving on to Timothy M. and Leah Stevens at 45 Starbuck Road.
Brian Madden from LEC Environmental Consultants, representing the applicant. The proposed project before you involves proposed pool and patio and some related septic work. The resource areas on the property are land subject to coastal storm flowage. There's BVW associated with Long Pond, and then there's also a coastal bank that's off-site, extending some buffer zone. So the proposed pool itself is located greater than 50 feet from all resource areas on or off-site. The pool itself is located mostly outside of the 100-foot buffer zone to the BVW associated with Long Pond. A small portion of that does occur within 100-foot. But the pool has been designed so it doesn't require the intrusion into high groundwater within that area. The east end of the pool is going to be the shallow end, so we'll maintain that 2-foot separation. The patio, there'll be a small retaining wall supporting a portion of that. It's a dry-laid stone patio. And septic lines are proposed to be realigned and new septic tanks. The septic tanks are not defined as structures under the bylaw. However, if there's a need for any dewatering, we are proposing to do that, direct that to dirt bags within the existing lawn areas. And that may be dependent upon the time of year that that's performed. But as proposed, no waivers required for the project, and I'll turn it over to questions.
Any questions from the commission?
Yeah, so this plan, I had worked on 45 Starbuck Road, which was just recently redeveloped. If you remember, that one had a kind of weird coastal bank because it was a walkout basement, and we were reestablishing that coastal bank. And so staff had asked that we just show the terminus of that coastal bank, and it terminates at a point where the slope ceases to be 10-1. And just to show that the proposed pool is outside of the 50-foot buffer zone to that offsite bank, and that was something that we had reviewed during the siting of the proposed project, but just for the record to have that on a plan of record.
Thank you. Questions from the commission? Questions from the public? All right, Jeff, do we have everything we need to close?
We do.
Would you like to close?
Please.
Is there a motion?
Motion closed.
Is there a second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so moving on to Arthur H. Patterson and Nancy R. Chiswick at 42 Meadowview Drive.
Brian Madden from LEC Environmental, representing the applicants. Proposed project involves a sewer connection with the recently installed sewer line. There's in the back portion of the lot, there's a small pond and vegetated wetlands associated with that. So the septic work is all within existing lawn developed areas. However, a portion of it does extend within the 25-foot buffer zone just to run the new line out to the sewer line in the roadway. And that's just exactly where the existing line comes out. And the proposed tank and leach field will be pumped and abandoned and backfilled per Title V regulations. So while there is work in the 25-foot, the sewer connection will result in a long-term net benefit to the resource area.
Thank you. Any questions from the commission?
I will say from our site inspection, and not to hold it up, that the most of the lot is completely undisturbed. It's just kind of a little pocket around the house. So
Yeah.
Here's pretty
Pond out back.
pretty well cared for.
That's good.
Given the circumstances.
Yeah, and how close the wetland is.
It's an old structure.
Yeah.
Structure.
Yeah. Any questions from the public? Okay. Jeff, do we have everything we need to close?
All good.
Okay. Would you like to close?
Please.
Is there a motion?
Motion to close.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, back to Washington.
The Great State. Okay, so we're moving back up to Great State Properties at 92 Washington Extension.
Sit down now. How you doing, Dave? Okay, for the applicant, Leo Azadorian with Blackman Associates. I'm here with attorney Arthur Reed. And the application, in essence, is just to relocate the garage and the shed that were constructed on the property. There's no net gain for any additional buildings. Obviously, the driveway would have to move and accommodate the relocation of the driveway. The resource area is land subject to coastal storm flowage. We're showing historic high water line on there, so we wanted to get the garage upland of that line, and that's pretty much it. The construction is pretty much the same as it was when we originally came in here a few years back, 3 years ago.
I mean, the reason for this is that we determined that the garage that had been constructed just a few years ago, substantial portion of it lies within what turns out to be former tidelands, filled tidelands. And in the course of a meeting that I had with Ben Lynch earlier this year, that point came out, regarding this property. It's mapped so that the line cuts right through the garage, and that would subject the garage to licensing and a variance in connection with licensing, and would interfere with any other potential work that would be done on the property. Sometimes it seems bizarre that things go up to DEP, and DEP waterways and DEP wetlands don't seem to communicate with each other. And it would be nice if the issue had been raised by DEP when that all went through, but one hand doesn't seem to shake the other. In any event, though, that's the reason why we are coming in with this, what would otherwise seem to be, gee, why are we moving something that we just put there a couple of years ago?
I still have my same concerns about the water velocity coming through all these buildings, so.
I mean, I have to agree with you there. I think of, most of the downtown waterfront as being filled tidelands. That's just the way that this island was constructed. And we had such a lengthy discussion before about the placement of the garage and shed to allow for, flow through, unobstructed. So I don't feel comfortable flipping it around now.
Yeah, I also think that you're running into the issue of, okay, I guess it would be to the east of this site, off the site plan. All of the properties to the east of this site, they're all sited below the historic high water mark. And so if we grant this application to move this one garage here, we're setting a precedent for all sorts of moves to the adjacent properties there. And I think that the commission, when this came in the first time, I wasn't on the commission, but I think there was a lengthy discussion about why the structure needs to be there. So I'm concerned about going through all the work and all the disturbance of moving the site or moving the structure again. I'm just concerned about that disturbance.
Any other thoughts or questions from the commission?
Not still stuck on
Yeah.
velocity.
So, I mean, it's on the ground the way we permitted it the first time.
So it's not like with panels and things, so it'll just be.
It's not flow through now.
It'll be an obstruction.
It's obstruction.
Right.
That's why we hit behind the main house.
Right, so.
Because all you're gonna get is this shooting down of water, it's gonna create a velocity.
Flow through there.
That's gonna cause erosion further, across the street.
Joe, are you concerned about the integrity of the structure itself, or is there another reason?
Other people across the street, what happens is as the high water comes in through a storm, what it's gonna do is funnel in between the two buildings, and then it's gonna accelerate, and then it's gonna go in between this house and this garage, and it's gonna accelerate even more, and it's gonna go even further up inland, and that was what our problem with this originally. So what we wanna do is flip this, so that this created a larger gap, and then the water could slow down and not accelerate more. I think this garage is gonna cause more problems. For the people across the street, and they're gonna have damage there, but there will be more damage inland.
Right, and we have this neighboring house.
Well, it's a garage and a house here.
Right,
And,
so the closer you put this, again, it concentrates the water that's in the velocity zone, kind of pushing it next door. We're having the shed here. It already would have been impeded by the house.
Meanwhile, of course, however, there's the problem of keeping the thing there because of the fact that it was constructed without benefit of a license in an area where a license is required. Again, that issue hadn't been identified. I mean, as you are undoubtedly learning more and more, the waterfront of Nantucket is replete with structures that were constructed in what are now identified by DEP waterways as being filled tidelands without benefit of license, and this is a real issue, and in fact it may not be licensable, and that leaves the situation in a real mess.
I do hear you, but I also think that issue is on DEP's behalf. They're supposed to do their due diligence to check the applications being, put through by the commission here against waterways, Chapter 91, all the licensing requirements that they need.
Yeah, I'm just saying as a practical matter that doesn't happen.
Doesn't happen a lot, actually.
Can I ask a question about that? Is the existing house licensed?
No,
the existing house precedes 1984 when the which is the cutoff year as far as DEP waterways is concerned on these things.
I was just curious.
And I believe when we went for an embassy license for the bulkhead, it was included at the time.
Why do you think it might not be licensable?
The amount of the increase in footprint is greater than the 10%, which is the maximum variance. Requires a variance. Any construction requires a within the filled tidelands requires a variance, and under the CMR regs that are applicable to it, the maximum increase in overall footprint on the site is 10%. And we're dealing with, even though this is not a very big structure, when I took a look at it, it was pretty clear that was going to push it over the point. The reg is the variance limited to 10% increase in height or in footprint. They will, with regard to the height of the structure, where something is being raised in elevation in order to deal with floodplain requirements, they will take more or less of a blind eye to the 10%. But on footprint, that's rigid. I've had that conversation in detail with Ben Lynch before he retired at DEP.
I mean, I know it's a tough situation for the owner, but it's the velocity zone. I don't know that we should be permitting really any new construction in these places, given like probably what's coming with climate and storm surge. So I don't feel comfortable with this move. Are there any comments from the public? What do we think, Commission?
I can see him moving it back, but I can't see him flipping it to the other location.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the existing conditions plan. I don't know what your setback required to maintain from the street is, but if you didn't move it laterally and you just moved it back closer to the street, could you get enough space to be out of the mean or out of that water line, or
I don't think
not?
so. The way the line cuts in, you know, the left-hand side of the lot, as you look at it on the map, the westerly side, is outside the line, whereas the easterly part is inside the line, and I don't think that any movement without moving it to the west would be practical.
I mean, it looks like you could get it close in this area. I'm not sure without, getting the measurements, but it looks visually or spatially like you can get it close.
Well, the front setback is 0 in this area. Sideline is 5.
Okay.
So existing is 22.8.
And
Proposed is 17.3.
Right. So how long is the structure?
I mean, I think they could do the same. I think they just run parallel to Washington Street.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so, and even maybe like a slight rotation, you could probably get it done.
Or at least get it more behind the house.
Right.
Obviously, the ingress egress out of the garage is also critical too. So.
Yeah. No.
And rotation becomes difficult with HDC because they expect the building to be more or less parallel to the street.
I know, but we're worried about the flood zone.
I understand. I understand.
I think if there is a way that you could go back and look at it and try, personally, I would appreciate seeing a proposed alternative if it's possible.
All right. Let's postpone. Let's continue while we look at any other possible alternatives. I don't know whether we're going to come up with anything or not, but let's continue it until the meeting of October 23rd.
Yeah. Could you also entertain us having it modeled? In other words, we'll take a look at the structures and we'll have somebody model the velocity through there
We certainly can
and
do
see
that.
the funnel effect.
Sure.
And if we could get somebody that does that for a living, and all right. and then give us time, at least another month to have it modeled.
Okay. So you're continuing until October 23rd?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
So moving on into the public meeting, request for determination. Linda D. Wolf at 6 Wamasquid Place.
My name is Paul Wolf, and Linda is my wife, and we are in the process of getting ready to hook up to the town sewer system. The new system that was put in on the whole Meadowview, Somerset, Marsh Hawk Lane area. Our address on this application is 6 Wamasquid Place, but our house is way at the back of our lot, which backs up onto Marsh Hawk Lane. So what we're going to do is pump from where our existing, there's two houses, by the way. One of our existing tanks is around out to the Marsh Hawk Lane, and the other house will do the same thing, but it's a much shorter run. I think Jeff looked at this. I think the question is, we're in the close to 50-foot line where we're going to have to dig out a couple of septic tanks and put a small pump tank in. So that's what the request for determination is.
So just to, I'll clarify and help out that the request included some resource area determination for the bordering vegetated wetland, which sets off the buffer, and that's what we reviewed and we agreed with. You can see it, it'd be on the north side of the houses. It's a pretty large wetland system that's there, kind of encompasses most of the lot, and the driveway kind of comes through it. It's pretty old.
Right.
And just to kind of review again, the proposal isn't to replumb, it's to kind of abandon the existing septic system and hook into the town sewer that runs through Marsh Hawk at this point.
Right.
And that's the only work that's proposed.
Okay. So Jeff, does staff have a recommendation for this one?
Yeah, I think we would definitely recommend the +2 for the resource area confirmation, and then the -3 for the work without requiring the notice of intent.
So moved already.
We appreciate Paul actually did this filing himself and without any real shenanigans. So
No, it was all your help.
Good credit. Good credit.
Wow.
Nice work.
No shenanigans on the second.
There's a second. All right. All in favor?
Aye. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm already semi-retired.
If it means Don's gonna catch a plane, then.
Okay, so are we going James and Sarah Tyler?
Yes.
Okay, so James and Sarah Tyler at 47 Millbrook Road.
Good evening, Don Bracken, Bracken Engineering. We're looking to have the wetland lines confirmed with the IDA. Wetlands, bordering vegetated wetland flagged by Brian Madden. There are 18 flags on the southern section of the property. And this is for the purpose of doing future site planning. Be happy to answer any questions. Brian is also here, as you know. Do you have any questions regarding the wetland flagging?
Jeff, did you check the flagging on this?
We confirmed this boundary as well.
So
Let's let Don catch his plane then.
you'd recommend a +2?
Yes, I would recommend the +2.
So moved.
Okay, is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, so going back up to Peter L. O'Brien and Natalie V. O'Brien at 36 Slow Beach Road. I know, it's insane.
Thank you again. For the record, Paul Santos with Nantucket Surveyors, representing the applicant Peter and Natalia O'Brien, owners of property at 36 Low Beach Road. This is a request for determination of applicability to confirm a resource area delineation, which is Coastal dune line, flags 1 through 8. It was delineated by David Haynes, and it is located essentially to the southerly most border of the existing property. Again, basically coincident with the old Nantucket Railroad baseline located adjacent to Low Beach Road heading to Sconset. And happy to answer any questions that you may have. There is no, it is within an area of NHESP jurisdiction, and it is outside, though, any 100-year flood zone.
Thank you. Jeff, do you guys have a recommendation on this one?
Positive too. Yes. This is kind of nice. We got to knock out a notice of intent and an RDA all on the same site. It's kind of nice.
Nice.
'Cause we had the big discussion too. We're like, why are we doing a notice and an RDA? But then after Paul explained it, makes sense.
Is there a second? Is there a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, passes, thank you. So moving into minor modifications, LaRusso at 316 Pulpus Road.
I'm gonna try to cover this. Well, David Haynes is sick today. Waters Way continued as a he is at home.
Well, I'm glad he's not contaminating us with his
No,
sickness.
so I told him I was not willing.
Oh my God,
to send
someone
in
was
on his notices, but I
coughing.
So,
Someone came to eat one and he was like, "Wait here," and started coughing.
all right, so just to run really quickly, we've approved this before. This is kind of for a whole site redevelopment, and after they finished up, they did some slight modifications to the location of the pool and the installation of a set of steps on the site as well, and fire pit. All of that work was kind of included before. It's just kind of shifted around in place a touch. We felt that it qualified for minor modification. Just kind of refining the existing plan. Yeah, so the garage studio and the house being removed and redone was all approved before. The one noteworthy thing on their site that's still not affected is up on kind of that northwestern edge in the stipple area is an area that's a St. Andrews Cross management area that they have to leave undisturbed, and if you go out to the site, it's, you know, quite the barrier in between them right now. They are pretty conscious of it. And before construction began, it still had stones on the ground as one of those permanently marked areas, and they were pretty good about it. So.
Okay.
Just kind of a finalization of the plan.
Okay. There's a lot happening on this plan.
A lot of lines.
Yep. Any questions from the commission? Is there a motion to accept the minor mod?
Motion to accept.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
So then moving on to JJ McAtee Jr., 1996 Revocable Trust Agreement.
I would say if you want to, Madam Chairman,
Mhm.
so I'm with Mark,
Do
we
both?
just do both of these at once, because they're those two sites that touch, and they're pretty much the same thing. So.
Would you like to do them together?
I don't want to drag them out.
Okay, so we're gonna hear both 226 Pulpus Road and 220 Pulpus Road.
This is the plan set is. So there's lots of lines on this too. To preface it, this was the project that Mark originally permitted for the installation of new IA septic systems. They're the ones that got kind of piped around and moved around.
All right, Mark Ritz from Site Design, representing the applicants at 220 and 226 Pulpus. Since the plan in front of me right now is 226, why don't I discuss that one first? We had an original approval to put new septic tanks in this area, just outside the 25-foot buffer to the BVW. There's very little room on this property, which isn't within the buffer. So we were putting in replacement tanks here, and we have a force main running all the way out to sewer beds, to leach field that is outside the 100-foot. We would like to relocate the tanks and place them outside the 25-foot buffer zone on this part of the property. It'll still be piped through the force main. There'll just be one pump chamber here. It'll be piped through the force main to the septic tanks here. They are, if anything, a little bit further away from the BVW than they are over here. And that's really the only change.
So they were within 25 and now they're just
They were
outside.
partially within 25 or kind of shoehorned at the very edge of the 25 because there was nothing better we could do before. We talked to some installers and we can get them over here now, which is a little bit better. So that's what we're proposing on 226. On 220, we're proposing essentially the same thing. I think that's the 220 plan over there. On this plan, originally we had the tanks in this area sandwiched between the 25-foot buffer zones. We're proposing to put them here, partially outside the 50. There's a little, the purple is the 50, so there's a little island of 50. We're just inside the 50 on a couple of corners. So again, it's a net improvement overall to the placement. So, and everything else remains the same in terms of sewer connections and force mains. So that's basically it for both of those.
Thank you. Any questions from the commission? Yeah, it's better, definitely. Thank you for moving them further away.
I'm glad we were able to make that work.
Yeah. Is there a motion to approve the minor mod? Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so moving on to Tessa B. Cressman at 3 Walwinet Road.
For the applicant, Art Gasparo, I'm before you tonight with a final landscaping plan and some modification to grades, partially within the buffer zone to bordering and I believe an isolated vegetated wetland. It's all part of the residential development of this particular property, which has been before the commission in the past. There is a pool proposed, which is well outside of the 100-foot buffer zone. There's no work proposed within the 50-foot buffer zone, and they kept the proposed walls outside of the 50-foot buffer zone as well. There were some walls that had been installed related to the septic system, and part of this is to kind of soften that grading and I think just make the place a little more aesthetically pleasing instead of engineered.
Thank you. Any questions from the commission? Okay, so is there a motion to approve the minor mod? Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving into our certificates of compliance, and we're starting at 64 Wall Street LLC at 66 Wall Street.
They're going to request a withdrawal of that certificate.
Okay.
They got a little ahead of themselves.
All right, so do we need to accept that withdrawal? All right, is there a motion?
Motion to accept the withdrawal.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Withdrawal accepted. Okay, so Kevin G. Martin at 15 High Brush Path.
This was for the construction of a pool and patio along High Brush Path and the maintenance of an existing fence. Yep, it's constructed in compliance, but we're recommending that our standard pool conditions be carried on as ongoing conditions for the chemical treatment of the pool and being drained outside of jurisdiction and all of our normal stuff be carried forward.
Okay. Any questions from the commission? Okay, is there a motion to issue the certificate with pool conditions ongoing?
So moved.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And then moving on to Nantucket Harbor Properties LLC at 8 Holbert Ave.
8 Holbert Ave was for originally the construction and maintenance of an existing deck and an addition. All of that work was done in compliance, and shown in compliance. At the time they did the work and constructed it, the wetland line was different than a different filing in our rules have kind of since changed, so there's been some monkeying around with wetland line since its approval, but it was still in compliance and constructed in the correct spot, so we were recommending that it also be issued with code conditions.
Okay. Is there a motion?
Motion issue with the monkey around.
Is there a second?
So moved.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Well, it's just, the next one that we do in the 1265 had a different wetland line and it caused the 50-foot setback to be different, and then they redelineated it with different parameters and the line shifted, so it got a little funky for both.
Awesome. All right, so that's this one. Yeah, John W. Weeks Jr. at 10 Holbert Avenue.
The early 2000s. So this is the direct next door neighbor to the last one. This was the earlier one. And this is also one where this work was for the relocation of a garage and to establish the undisturbed buffer that was there. That project has also been completed in compliance, and the site remains in compliance, but again, the wetland line and the buffer shifted in the next filing, so we were just trying to get it all cleaned up. Correct. There's the 1300 numbers in the 1265, but they're in compliance with the thing closes out, so we're recommending that this one also gets issued.
Okay, is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
To say that both those filings involve like a Paul and I sitting down for like a 10-minute conversation about wow.
Yeah, they're old. Okay, moving on to 28 Easton Street Realty Trust at 28 Easton Street.
Sorry. Catch up to myself here. So 28 Easton Street was for some work on the existing dock and float, and I think the pictures speak pretty well that the project was completed in compliance.
Looks like the birds have liked sand.
Yeah, the birds are not shy for you, but never are. So we recommend this one for this to get issued as well.
Okay, is there a motion to issue the certificate? Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
That's right. Then moving on to Michael S. and Christina Elizabeth Jemison at 195C Hummock Pond Road.
All right. Mark is here to answer questions. So just to kind of recap on 195C Hummock Pond Road. This was the one that started as the enforcement project for the desolation of Hummock Pond.
The desolation of
That
Hummock
was
Pond.
there. It's really kind of what it is. So we had tied this order to a subsequent order to allow for some additional site work that was going to be allowed to be started upon successful completion of the plantings. If that makes some sense to everybody. So I think we've probably been out there now, probably about 10 times since we issued the first order, kind of doing we've gotten rid of the debris. Can you please come out and look? And we went out and we go and look. We've done some of the earthwork that was required to be done to fix some of our work before. Please come out and check. We've got the plant material here. We haven't put it in the ground. Can you please come out and check? So we've been out there a lot. They did up the number of plantings a bit as far as plants that went in the ground. We typically don't discourage more, but I would say right now that the site is very well vegetated. I think the plan that they submitted, where you can kind of see that area
You can see the lawn area and then the replantings there, and then the trees that were up the sideline as well. Everything is in and is growing and is green. There aren't any real holes in the vegetation. I think we feel as a staff level not issuing out the complete certificate of compliance for that to let the monitoring go, but to at least issue out the partial enough for them to proceed with their other work, and kind of keep that monitoring plan going. I think that's the plan. Did you want to add anything?
No, just that, once again, Mark Ritz from Site Design. That aerial was done about a week and a half ago, and you can see the black line on it. That's where the original limit of restoration was supposed to be. They've actually gone quite a bit beyond and done a lot of extra restoration. So we're just
the yellow line.
Oh,
Sorry.
the yellow line. I'm sorry. I could forget what color it was on the plan, but they went considerably beyond where they were supposed to. So we're just hoping for a partial cert to let the other order move forward.
Okay, and the neighbors' plantings are reestablishing too.
The neighbors are there. I've spoken with the neighbors as well. I've spoken to the Hardys, and everyone seems to be happy with how it's progressing and that it's in. I mean, obviously, some of the cedars that left were larger than the ones that went in by a bit because they're significantly older, but they're not small. I mean, you can see in the pictures it's not like they put in the little like ones you get on Arbor Day that you plunk into the ground. They're substantial trees. So I think we feel pretty good about it. And it's coming in nicely. Obviously, a few more years of monitoring and keeping going, but I think they met the requirement that they were asked to meet as far as trying to restore that area. And again, I appreciate the, while at times annoying for all of the calls, but I appreciate before they did anything, they called and set up a time and said, it's all here, come look, let's get it in. And then a couple of times we just showed up because we were in the neighborhood, because we knew they were working, and there were never any issues. And the folks that did the work did a really nice job and communicated a lot, maybe more than they needed to, but that's okay. I'd rather have it that way than the other way around.
Yeah, we need more of those conscientious individuals.
Yeah.
So then,
This is a motion to issue the partial certificate.
with ongoing monitoring.
Yeah, the way that partials work is you just close out the initial requirements and all of the rest of the order, so all the monitoring is still in effect.
Okay.
When they finish, they'll come back to do a complete cert and they'll close out the order. But this is just to essentially release the ones that were relative to the other work that we're completing on.
Great. So is
Move
there,
to issue the partial certificate.
is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
It's kind of the beauty of partial certificates.
I know,
The partial.
yeah. All right.
Partial to being full.
I will say, Mark was all excited too, because he just got his official, Seth will be able to clarify what it is.
This is drone mapping.
Yes.
Yeah.
He got his official license done and finished all of his tests, and is excited to be able to.
I can tell just by looking at the photograph that it was created with Pix4D, which is a high-end aerial orthomosaic mapping software.
Very, very nice.
The resolution on that is much better than you get from anywhere else.
All right, so moving into orders of conditions, starting with Laz Family Nominee Trust at 20 Wakuit Road.
So last family, this was the project for the creation of that Fordine area. So I do have one more condition to add from our discussion.
4 feet.
Sorry, I have to change folders because this one is so old. It's a different one. It's in my 3100s. 3100. Because I wrote it during the hearing. I recommend an additional condition 20 that simply says the upper 4 feet of bank shall remain unaltered with the exception of the sand land area.
Is there a motion to approve as amended?
So moved.
Is there a second? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
That passed unanimously, right?
Yeah. Aye.
Okay. Right. Okay, and then we're moving on to Phil Paston at 111 Eel Point Road.
So I did have a couple technical corrections in this one that I caught late. We're not maintaining, I have it in there to make sure everyone's okay with that wording. I put the maintenance of sand or snow fencing, because some people call it sand fencing, some people call it snow fencing, for what's there. And then I have a couple spots where I have the core envelopes or tubes where I will admit that I poached from some of these, where a couple of the spots might say core logs, but it should say core envelopes or tubes in place of logs, but I'll sort all of those out. And then that's our pretty standard conditions for any structure like this, with the exceptions being the end, and I have this condition 34. And again, this is just kind of my thought on it after listening to last time, and then a little bit more today. So I put construction shall not begin until September 15th of 2020 in order to monitor the dune area currently in the snow fence area. Should the snow fence be completely exposed, it shall be removed. Upon removal of the snow fence in the absence of coastal dune prior to September 15th, 2020, the system may be installed following requesting the start of work to the commission for authorization. So that was kind of my thought on how to, if that snow fencing completely comes out, they file that with us and you guys can decide if they can proceed with the other project. If it's totally gone, if it's totally buried, then it sits, and then you guys would have to reauthorize that work again.
Okay, so can you read 34 again? Sorry.
One second.
I don't know if I have it all.
Construction shall not begin until September 15th, 2020 in order to monitor the dune area currently in the snow fence area. Should the snow fence be completely exposed, it shall be removed. Upon removal of the snow fence in absence of the coastal dune prior to September 15th, 2020, the system may be installed following requesting the start of work to the commission for authorization. And I think I would like to add, should the coastal dune still be in place, the applicant shall request to amend the order to set a new construction start date. So if it stays, we can come in and amend the permit for it to say September 15th, 2021. Sorry,
Okay.
that's the other side of the coin that I mentioned earlier, and I completely forgot to put it in.
And I'm just not seeing it right away. How often are we gonna get, will it be monitored? Because I know that was the.
So it's our typical monitoring for just.
Which condition number is it?
There's a 17 where they have to do the storm monitoring that's there.
Storm events.
For there, and then they also have to do it at least twice a year where they'll come in and report it. I'm gonna guess that given the interest of getting it constructed, that they'll be watching it a lot if that snow fence starts to go up or down, especially if the sand starts to go down on it. But we usually have enough storms that if that's happening, they'll be back in touch with that, and if it's not happening, sand will probably be accumulating. So.
Okay, thank you.
Any other?
And to be fair, Maureen, we have so many projects in the stretch now from like 87 through 123 Eel Point Road. We're out there quite a bit. So.
any other thoughts from the commission? Is there a motion to approve as amended?
Motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye, so that carries with Commissioner Engelberg recused. And then we are moving on to 115 Baxter Road LLC and 117 Baxter Road LLC at 115 and 117 Baxter Road.
So I guess this is the question. So, looking at the order, the plan of record calls for that foundation to be, the abandoned foundation to be removed at 5 feet. And for some reason, I put exposed. Correct? But I wanted to put in there. So it should be, wow, I butchered the English language there, but it should say, should the abandoned foundation, the abandoned foundation shall be removed when it is 5 feet from the top of the bank. And then any debris that falls from the bank shall be removed from the beach by the applicant. So, per chance, there's a huge storm and it lands on the beach, they still have to pick it up. But if it gets within 5 feet, it's got to go. And then I put 20 in there, so it should. Wow, man, my grammar just abandoned me for this one. Should any part of the new structure and patio get within 10 feet of the coastal bank, the applicant shall amend this permit to begin retreat from the eroding bank. So, if the patio gets within 10 feet, they can come in and amend to scale that backwards. And that was kind of the thought for that. And then we had talked a little bit about 21. And I know this was a little bit of a sticky point with everybody. That as far as the pickup goes, that the applicant shall provide assurance to the commission either through a performance bond escrow or a contract with a contractor authorized to remove any debris from the beach at the applicant's expense or similar. So I think the intent was just to have something in place to know that it's going to get picked up and someone's authorized to do it. I think even if they had a contract with, say, Toscana to say if it hits the beach, you can go pick it up and we'll pay for it. Doesn't necessarily have to involve money off the jump as long as there's someone engaged to do it.
So just like having a memorandum of understanding signed with
Yeah,
them?
essentially if they had, you know, they could have whoever, but I think that way there's no expense off the front to someone just to have an agreement that says, hey, if I call you to come pick it up, you need to come pick it up. Or if it's an issue, we at least have on file that they're there. Is that, we never put that last part in. Do you want to check on that, Art, or are you comfortable that they just have an agreement with someone to go pick it up, that they just file with us?
Yeah, it's really a public hearing's closed, it's kind of up to you.
Yeah, so.
I don't know, an agreement, I mean, it was having walked along the beach, you know, below Baxter Road and seeing all the various places where they left, you know, all kinds of things have been left and where people aren't, this is the woman, I think they bought this house fairly, you know, just a few years ago. I mean, I would be concerned, I'd personally rather have a bond that's there and paid for and then, you know, if they decide to walk away, then we aren't left holding the bag. Because even an agreement with a contractor, I mean, if they don't get paid, I don't know that we're gonna go do it. I mean, I'm just saying, performance bonds, you know, it's not, as far as I'm aware, it's not like there are bazillions of dollars, you know, to provide. So you don't have to, by any means, put the amount of money up that it would cost. So I'd rather have something, since we've seen people leave things in place that are at best ugly and at worst dangerous, and then they don't seem, you know, the town doesn't have the you know, the wherewithal to get rid of those things. I would rather see something that's more guaranteed than just a contract that isn't paid for in advance, myself.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good idea.
Yeah. But, okay, so,
Madam Chair, for clarification, if the foundation is removed, is there still a need for the performance bond? In other words, could the condition somehow be modified to allow that some time? I don't want them to be out of compliance for not doing performance bond if they're just gonna remove the foundation anyway.
No.
That's all I'm trying to say, is why have a performance bond if the foundation is removed? So maybe you can have it both ways by saying a performance bond if the foundation is not removed in some time period or something.
so, I think I can help with that. So I think if you have something that you said, the applicant shall provide assurance to the commission either through a performance bond or escrow to remove debris from the beach at the applicant's expense or similar, should the foundation be removed, should the abandoned foundation be removed, the need for a performance bond is no longer needed.
Yeah, I think that's
Yeah,
fair.
that's fine.
Yeah.
Good,
Yeah.
And then I still always like to have any agreement or bond shall be provided to the commission within 90 days of the end of the appeal period, so we at least have it in place.
Okay. And then I have just a question that I don't know if it should go in findings. Because we wouldn't normally allow a structure to be placed on that lot next door, do we need to make a finding that it's a coastal retreat and therefore granted, or is that not
So
necessary?
in the waiver request itself, there is, we specifically reference it being retreat. So the lot is also a legally merged lot at this point. So 115 and 117 are together. So I think you're covered in that avenue, but I specifically made sure in the waiver that it's specifically like given the current historic site conditions and the nature of the project being retreat from an eroding coastal bank, commission finds that the project will not have an adverse impact to the resource area. So, but I did agree that I wanted to make sure that retreat was mentioned.
Okay. Any other thoughts, or is there a motion to approve as amended?
Motion to approve.
Is there second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That's approved unanimously. Thank you. So moving on to 262 Pulpus Nominee Trust at 262 Pulpus Road.
So this was the pool and cabana and the invasive species work, and then the restoration of wetland and buffer zone. Our normal pool conditions, and then our kind of our standard invasive commission, some photo monitoring, kind of that supplemental regrowth for native species that are there, and then that all restoration areas that require planting shall contain no cultivars. All restored areas shall be clearly marked to prevent intrusion into the area. So whatever the rest of the site's just got wooden posts around it. But just something that marks it so people know not to
know what anymore. But they have a pretty extensive system of little like wooden posts. My guess is they'll probably want to continue that same wooden post, but they may want to use rocks or something that marks it so they know not to go in there.
Motion approved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. So moving on to Olson Realty Trust at 197A Matticat Road.
This was the septic tank was there. Guess they couldn't pick it up.
A motion to approve as drafted.
So moved.
Second, all in favor? Aye. Passes unanimously. So moving on to Timothy M. and Leah Stevens at 45 Starbuck Road. We have that one.
No, I didn't draft that one because we have that. The plan. Yeah, it's not in there, but it didn't require any waivers that outside of regular pool stuff. Does anyone have any additions they want to make for next time on that?
So, motion to approve.
No, we can't do it
We'll
until
just do it
next
later.
time.
It's
Yeah.
all right. Brian already knows that they'll be
But if you have ideas for what
Got
Jeff is gonna draft.
Yeah, I can do that. Motion for ideas.
So we're gonna move on then to Arthur H. Patterson and Nancy R. Chiswick at 42 Meadowview Drive.
This was the sewer connection. Sorry, I couldn't think of any.
Sewer connection already.
Yes, that one will be the sewer.
Okay.
I couldn't think of any conditions. That seemed unbelievably straightforward.
I know. Is
The
there
septic system adjacent to the resource area, getting replaced with the sewer connection.
so is there a motion to approve as drafted?
Move this
Ernie
as
made-
drafted.
Okay, is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Passes unanimously. Moving on to extension of orders of conditions. LaRusso at 316 Pulpus Road.
Oh, sorry, we did a minor model of this one earlier today. They're in the process of construction out there. And they have requested their 3 one-year extensions as their order expires in October of 2019. And they feel they're just gonna need time to finish and get vegetation reestablished and everything put back together.
Okay.
But it is a site in compliance, so that's what 4 minor modules do for you.
Yeah. We'll extend your construction period.
Yes.
All right. So is there a motion to extend the order of conditions for 3 one-year periods?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And then moving on to Locke at 34B Grove Lane.
So they're just seeking a 1-year extension for this project. For the project originally was for construction of a structure in the buffer zone, and they're just seeking to extend that permit to finish that work.
Okay. Is there a motion to grant one-year extension?
Motion to grant.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, and then moving into other business, approval of minutes from September 11th, 2019.
Motion to accept.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Terry.
Yeah, thank you, Terry. Monitoring reports.
I don't think we have any this time. Oh, I do have one, sorry.
No, I'll do that in administrative second first. That's okay.
Okay.
That's not really a monitoring report.
Okay. So then moving on to illicit discharge regulations.
Peter, so just to preface this for everybody, this was something that town administration asked for. The select board kind of directed these to be put together. These are regulations that they are looking to adopt, and they sent them to the Board of Health as well for their kind of review and endorsement. They're hoping to do the same from here, and then they'll take up these potential regulations through a regular public hearing process. These were just more for you guys to review, but the intent of them is to start at least the discussion or capturing in some of the, I think what everyone's kind of identified a problem with the number of discharges, whether they're temporary dewatering discharges or more permanent style discharges. Some of the issues that have come up with pools in the town. Some of these areas are well outside of your guys' jurisdiction. Some of them are not there, but they obviously could potentially impact, and they've just asked for you guys to take a look, and if you feel that they're good enough for a public hearing and kind of further discussion, that you guys could endorse that, and they'll hopefully proceed with their regular public hearing. It's a public hearing, so they have to advertise it and do all of those things too. So I don't want people to feel like they're left out in the cold about it. I know there are lots of folks that probably have comments and concerns. There are always regulations that are there. But I hope everyone had a chance to at least review them. I won't go through them because they're long.
So I just had a question about the exemptions. Then right, what caught my eye was the landscape irrigation residential vehicle washing, and I realize that they're allowed on somebody's property, but like we have a lot of people with irrigation systems that run, and then irrigation is running off-site, flowing down paved roads. So is there any way to kind of parse that out? Because I wouldn't necessarily consider that exempt if they're regularly allowing their irrigation to flow off-site.
Yeah, if I might just add, I had the same concern. I drive by properties a lot that I have what are called free car washes, where like their irrigation system's clearly just pumping straight into the street because it's it's not set up right, or there needs to be some maintenance. And I feel like having that as an exemption is a potential issue, or at least clarifying some way like you're allowed to irrigate on your property, but if that irrigation is uncared for and is continuously getting outside the property, that's a prohibited activity.
Yes, I see your point. So I think the way to accomplish what you guys are looking to do is to provide comment to the public hearing to be included on the record for that you think that should be restricted or conditioned in a way to prevent that, because I don't really think, well, one, I'm not sure I have the ability to make an edit here and just send them the edit and say here you go, but I think if that's what we're looking to do, maybe we'll parse that language out a bit farther, or I'll try to redraft that for you guys to do, and then you could send that in as part of a comment for the hearing process for that, to say we've looked at it, and I think if you guys end up endorsing these, we can say that there were some concerns that the commission will put in writing for you guys to review as part of the hearing process, and that would hopefully be the better way than trying to do it on the fly right here.
Okay. Any other thoughts about this from commissioners?
The only thought I had was spas are not mentioned in the definition of swimming pool in chapter 139. Wherever we define swimming pool doesn't include spas either. So I just think that should be specifically included, because people will drain those as well.
They drain them more, apparently.
Yeah, or more often, frankly. So, I'm sure they don't mean to exempt them, but since they're not included in the definition of swimming pool, I think we should specifically mention spas, both indoor and outdoor. Because there, you can have an indoor one as well.
Sure.
Maybe you don't have to say indoor and outdoor.
No, I think we can do that, but I think
Yeah.
if you guys have a number of those, I mean, we can always request that into them, and we can always kind of carry this forward as an agenda item too. that people
Okay, I
can
guess
see.
I would just say add the word spa.
Mm.
And if they wanted to throw a definition in the other thing, I'm sure we can give them up somewhere. I mean, but I just think it should be specifically included.
I'm very happy that we're finally getting something on the books here. Mm. Okay, any other thoughts or comments?
I'm
Good.
just a little confused by the fee schedule for a second. So it says in the enforcement chapter that the fine is going to be $300 per day occurrence.
Yes.
But then in schedule of fees in part 3, it's saying unpermitted discharge is going to be 4 times the permit fee, which would be only $200.
So those fees would be on top of the initial violation.
Okay,
Yeah, the fine and fees are separate.
got it.
Okay. Good on our thoughts and comments? Okay, so are we gonna continue this as an agenda item or just get a little letter for the select board?
You can go either way. I mean, you could simply put a letter to the select board that you feel they could go forward with the public hearing. If you guys wanted to make a motion to do that, but then you could still carry it forward as an agenda item as well to kind of continue to look at that and provide more refined comments that would go into that hearing if you guys were interested.
I mean, I think our comments would probably be valuable.
I think so. We'll let them know we reviewed it. It's good.
Okay, so do we need a motion for that?
So I think if you made a motion that said something that, you know, the commission would like to send initial comments to the select board to allow it to recommend going into a public hearing, and that you'll be providing additional comments with suggested revisions or changes for that public hearing.
Okay. Is there a motion for
So
what
moved.
Jeff said? Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Alright. So reports, committees, crack, nothing to report, CPC.
We've heard 4:15. So next, moving through 3-4 weeks, we'll be hearing for the next 3-4 hours every Tuesday. Yeah.
Lucky
Good.
you.
I'm so excited.
Remember, you
No, it's actually, it's fun. No, I'm joking. So.
Alright. Well, you've got a lot of exciting things ahead.
That was for Ian at home.
NP and EDC.
So I went to they have a meeting in August, I went to the meeting last week, and the main thing of interest to us would be the overall issues on swimming pool regulations, not just the discharge, but, you know, the fences and, you know, all the things that apparently we haven't quite nailed down. So there was some discussion that there should be a group that would look at it from all the different ways rather than having, you know, done kind of piecemeal by all the different, you know, building department and, you know, all these different, we should have swimming pool regs that would be easy for people to look at. But that seemed to be something that would be really, really difficult to put together a group of people who would just bang that out and get it done. So this, I suppose that's to be expected, but that was the main thing that would have any interest for us.
I would disagree that, I think you could put a group to do that.
Yeah, I would think so too. It's not, I mean.
There are far
so
more
many
complicated
people.
regulations that the town has put together over time than swimming pool regulations.
Yeah.
I think we could put enough bright minds together to come up with something to at least have a substantive discussion
You
about.
could probably steal regulations from, I don't know,
Well,
other
I mean,
municipalities.
before, you know, I am sure.
In all
that we can
fairness, no
find
one has ever
another
written
town
a
that
new
has-
regulation in the last 20 years.
Yeah.
They just cut and paste from all the ones they like.
Mm.
So,
Alright.
put little twists on it to make it fit.
Well, maybe, I mean, could our I mean, maybe this is totally out of our bailiwick, but our
We'll
comments
probably
on
have a,
the
we'll probably
discharge,
have a,
on the public
representative
hearing,
on that
you know, for the
that is
discharge
put
things,
together.
somebody could certainly raise the issue, why don't we just have, you know, get together some people and here's a proposed regulation for all the swimming pool stuff. I mean, it could be done.
I think a lot of that would be forthcoming. I think some of this is.
Is that part of what?
I
was
think
in
some
that-
of this
that
in the
stuff
short
that had
term is
been
a
on the
bit of a
back burner?
stopgap until it's resolved elsewhere. But I also think that there's a number of, I know the Board of Health is contemplating some more comprehensive swimming pool regulations. I know we've talked about it here as it relates to environmental impacts in our area of jurisdiction too. So I think you'll end up with a bit of that, but I tend to agree if there's easier ways for people to understand the rules, it's better for everybody.
Yeah, I agree.
But I would also say that in the interim of them being developed and being perfect, having something to at least have some controls in place in the interim is something that we are desperately in need.
Yeah, I mean, the issue of fencing versus pool covers, and the people have these automatic pool covers, but what, they're not there for the winter, and the pool cover blows off, and what happens, and you've got this empty pool sitting out, you know, and it's just things that people haven't thought about since we have so many more pools. I think it really is important.
Yeah, in the future. Yeah.
Call our selectmen, exactly.
Okay, so no mosquito control committee. On to commissioners' comments. None. All right, administrative staff reports.
Yeah, I just have a short one. For those who didn't attend the select board meeting last week or didn't watch it on TV, I would be amazed if anyone had missed it. Steve Bender made a public comment at the start of the meeting about the Salem Street parking area. So it's the A&P or Stop and Shop parking or Grand Union parking or whatever you want to choose to call it. And asked some questions about that. We have sent him the stuff that was done in 2017 that we did. And I have contacted those same guys again and say, hey, we want all of your inspection logs and things again that they're supposed to provide upon request. So I have requested that from them. But I think what I'm hoping to do now is just to get kind of full authorization from you guys to just deal with it once and for all and just say, hey, you guys need to do every 2-month check-ins, like standing request every 2 months. You guys need to send your inspection reports, because going through it today, a couple of them are difficult to see. One of the catch basins definitely needs to be cleaned out again, but it's also something too where I did kind of send an email around through the town that if we're going to go through the exercise of pursuing this with these guys, let's try to make sure that we're also cleaning out our catch basins and doing those things. So the Chapter 91 license explicitly gives the permission to the Concom to request the records. It's a 91 license, so you guys don't have really any authority to enforce the conditions other than asking for the records. So I've asked the waterways folks if there's more we can do to help them with that, but can at least ask for what they've done. So, and hopefully they'll send something back, but it looks to me like they're a little behind again. So, but he brought it up, so I just wanted to bring it up to you guys because he made mention that we sent them a letter, and his comment was, as far as I know, outside of sending him a letter, nothing was actually done. So we sent them the report where they photographed all of the catch basins before and after and documented what they had done, and they used the company that was there. So the select board will have that. It's going to be on their agenda next week, so I'll be there for that. If anyone else wants to go, they're more than welcome. But they have that with just kind of a brief thing, and hopefully by then we'll have the rest of it resolved. And with your guys' authorization, I think we'll probably just put in my Outlook calendar every 2 months to call them and say, did you check your Sorbent pillows? Yes? All right. Can you please send me the documentation for that? Thank you very much. And then we'll just go from there.
You're nice. I don't give reminders on this stuff. It's just get it in.
Well, the problem is I would
You're
love
calling them.
I would love to do more, but the Chapter 91 license kind of has boundaries to what can and cannot do. And I know calling waterways and telling them they're not cleaning their catch basins, they're going to go, okay, we'll give them a call, and then we'll
Yeah,
They
it's
don't
gonna
come down
go
unless
in
there's
circles.
multiple issues. It's just been kind of a historic problem, and we have asked that if we can do more out here, or petition them to do more, and they're not very receptive to that, so.
Okay.
If you guys could, someone could make a motion to do that, that would be amazing.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I just remembered something that I meant to ask about. Were we had discussed earlier about having good morning, thank you. Executive session about the lawsuit, and I was just wondering what are we, what's on the schedule? Is something that's scheduled for us to do that, or with?
Sure, so there's nothing scheduled yet. I think we're looking to schedule probably that session when there's actual litigation in hand for us to also discuss, because right now it's still living at the clerk of courts, and we haven't actually been served. So to have that, I did speak, I want to get this correct, because Ashley asked a very similar question the other day, and I am looking for my response from town council that I said. There it is. So he wanted to say that we can feel free to report that the select board voted to support the commission's denial decision in both the Mass DEP proceedings and the local bylaw appeal in Superior Court in that session. So
that's very good to hear.
So we can discuss
That's
that
on the
further,
record.
but that
I'm very glad.
that is something that
We can say publicly.
yes,
Good.
that was specifically reported. So.
Thank you.
So when there's more going on.
But yes, so we're waiting,
yeah.
because right now, so
Then
we
we'll
know
deal with
we know
executive
there's
session.
pending litigation in the sense that we know that there is an appeal that has been filed. We have not been directly served the contents of that appeal. So I think George would like to get that in hand to have the executive session centered around the specific pending litigation too.
Oh, sure.
So we will probably have an executive session once that's through, just to kind of go over that. But I think, like I said, we're waiting for that to be in hand. So whenever that shows up.
Great. Thank you.
All right. Now is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Done.